And it's about having them participate.
Sure.
I think part of it, is one aspect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And if you haven't, little sidebar plug. We don't make any money off this or anything, okay? But Simon Sinek did a phenomenal thing when he started out doing the TED Talks, and he just talked about in business, you got to answer what is your why.
That's a taste of leadership lessons, courage, humility, and a little fun. Part 2. This week's episode of The Wise Guys, a podcast that unleashes the unthinkable in culture, religion, and everyday life. In this conversation, the guys continue the conversation on holistic perspectives that can help us better navigate leadership challenges. So, strap in, shatter the norm, and see if you are willing to let Mac and Coach Stu take you to a place of thinking differently.
All right, welcome to The Wise Guys, a podcast where we unleash the unthinkable and shatter the norms to help you expand your worldview. And I always say that every week, don't I? You, us, help us expand our worldview. Right. Hopefully this will help us to do it just a little bit better. So that's why we're here. That's why we do this. That's why we have so much fun. And hi, I'm Mac, your host. And in this episode, we're going to pick up on part 2 of our leadership discussion that we started last episode. So I'm going to say, if you haven't listened to that, you should. We're going to give a little bit of highlights tonight on it, but go back and listen to that episode. It was, I think, really cool. We had a good time with it. So do that, because that's what we're going to talk about. And then we got the wise guy. The wise guy tonight.
Singular.
Right? Singular. Got to Coach Stu in the house.
The wise guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Mac. Hey, Mac. Good to see you. Man, we're going to be missing the Rev tonight, I'll tell you that. Which means there probably won't be any new memes coming out.
I did do one from last week.
I know.
Oh, no, I did one from his sermon on Sunday is what it is. Okay.
He has some good ones. He has some good ones. We're going to miss him tonight. He can't be here. Yeah. But he gave us the okay to go ahead and
he's got an interesting component. He's a great component to what we do.
Yes.
And we are. Well, you'll miss a little bit of him too, just not just us. So
Mac, let me say hey to the Rev.
Yeah.
And hello to all you beautiful exotic cocktails out there.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to the Wise Guys podcast.
The Wise Guys.
Yes.
All right. So we're talking about wise guys. We always have words to the wise.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of what we do. Hopefully you can pick up a little bit on this one. So here it is. You won't lose your shirt if you roll up your sleeves.
Let me see. My sleeves are rolled up. And I got the flex too.
There it is. Okay. No sniggle it, but okay. I can still see it. All right.
Oh, man. Yeah. This.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, people that phrase is pretty common, rolling up your sleeves, right? Mm-hmm. To me, it's just like, hey, let's do some hard work. Mm-hmm. Like, let's go, Yeah. And, I mean, it's kind of like you won't lose your shirt is like you're losing something. Yeah. Like lose your shirt. Like you hear about that with maybe like investments or something like, oh, I don't want to lose my shirt if I invest in, that's like you're losing something.
Right.
So I don't know. This thing to me encourages like,
do the work.
Effort, hustling, do the work. I mean, being proactive, getting your hands dirty, just, hard work, doing hard work, doing hard things.
Well, and this is what the podcast is all about in general, that we encourage, again, not only ourselves, but all of you to do the work, okay? Yeah. Because most of the stuff we talk about, almost all, I'm going to say all the stuff we talk about, is great information, in my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you have to take it, you have to do something with it, right? And, we are going to talk about some of that tonight when it comes to leading. But one of the things we talked about, I'm just going to steal a little bit of Stu's thunder here. We talked about last week about you got to lead yourself. You know, a lot of times people don't think about that component of leadership, do they?
Right.
So,
you did say this is part 2. So let's give them a little summary of what part 1
Good.
was.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to part 1, please go back and do so. But Absolutely. It is not a requirement to hear part 1 to get something out of part 2.
True.
So let me just go through some of the categories we covered. So the first one we talked about in part 1 was the courage to lead. And we asked the question, are leaders born or are they made? And we all agreed yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the answer is yes.
To both, yeah. And then we talked about, how do you lead yourself? Because you're when you think of leadership, a lot of times you're thinking of leading other people, but you are leading yourself down some path, right? So that was something. And then here was probably the biggest aha, I think, for a lot of people, having the courage to follow. When you think about leadership, to think about following.
Yeah.
You know, that's important. And I remember I mentioned last week, I'm okay with doing this. And I love in my coaching team being able to have others coach and lead a practice where I'm following them. To me, that's healthy.
Right.
You know?
Sure. Oh, I totally agree.
And then we had under courage to lead, something that the Rev always says is that your mind and your heart are kind of moving in the right direction. So he always says, follow your heart, but don't forget to bring your
bring your mind along
bring
with
your
it.
brain along with
Good advice. Yeah.
So that was the courage to lead section. And then we went into bad leadership characteristics.
Yeah, and we didn't hit that too hard. We just want to make sure we reminded everybody, you can do it badly too. Now there doesn't mean there can't be redemption in there, can't be learning in there,
right?
Can't be, stuff that turns out good, but if you don't have to go through it, sometimes if you're just a little bit sharper or you're a little bit more prepared or whatever it might be, but there is a way to have bad leadership too.
There is, and that typically you're ineffective when that's occurring, and there could be some ethics that are being questioned. And, I wrote down, I remember when I was looking at this topic, I wrote down, or this section, the word judgmental, there could be some judgment in there. And then there was this, and I know people think this, a lot of leaders are like this. There was a trusting or a not trusting aspect to that, which I think is a bad leadership characteristic. And here's the phrase, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I allocated this I assigned it to somebody else, but you know what? I can do it better.
Right.
So I'm just going to do it, instead of maybe having them do it. So that to me that's not being effective. It's not trusting the people on your team, right? So that's bad leadership characteristics. So then the next section was, what is your why? And we asked a couple of questions. Is it about me or we? Yeah,
we love that term, don't we?
Yeah.
Me or the we. Yeah.
Right. And then, is it really lonely at the top? And I made the point that I thought that was the wrong perspective.
Exactly.
Because leadership isn't, you shouldn't be alone in your leadership.
Isolated.
Yeah.
Right.
So and then I wrote down about being, loving and caring, and you want people that you're leading to live their best life. So how do you do that? And it's about having them participate. Sure. I think part of it, is one aspect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, if you have a little sidebar plug, we don't make any money off this or anything, okay? But, Simon Sinek did a phenomenal thing when he started out doing the TED Talks, and he just talked about, in business, you got to answer, what is your why?
Right.
They don't care what you do. People don't care what you do until they understand why you're doing it. All right.
Exactly.
So,
and you may not know this, right? So you got to ask yourself so you can answer that question.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. For yourself.
If you haven't done that, find out what your why is. Whenever you have a feeling about something and you care about it, right? You might have a little bit of passion involved. Like, ask yourself, why do I care about this?
Yeah.
Why am I passionate about this? You may know, but you may not.
Yeah.
And then figuring that out is telling sometimes.
Yeah, and what I learned, that's a great place to start. And then what I was taught a while back was, whatever you answer, whatever the answer is to that you're talking about, here's the next question for you. Why?
Why?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it helps you get past the easy answer or the quickie or the thing is top of mind.
Right.
And it forces you, however many layers down that you need to go, you just keep asking why after you get the answer. Because usually we don't answer stuff completely or with proper focus initially. It might have parts in there, but
Yep.
You got to really start to dig down and really, I don't know, it's a visceral thing kind of almost that you got to get to the bottom of. Oh, that's why
Yes.
that happens and that happens and that happens. So
Yes,
anyway.
and those are good moments. So
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
one
yeah.
more section that
Yeah.
we covered before we hit part 2 here.
Yep.
And it was The Power of Inspiration. That'd be a good book, right? That probably exists
Probably
already.
is one already,
The Power
yeah.
of Inspiration, right? So, a good leader gives more inspiration than information.
Yeah, that's
And I often say when you meet somebody, it's better to be interested instead of interesting.
I love that too.
Right.
Wait,
There's got to be a meme for
yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying. The rev isn't here, but there we go. Okay, I'm going to have to pick up on that one. All right, good. I love it.
And we talked about helping others to stop getting ready to get ready to get ready.
Yeah. Right.
We tend to do that,
Get off
and
the
just
dime.
start
Yeah.
walking, moving forward, making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things we mention a lot is the spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So become inspired yourself by being animated and directed by the spirit. I mean,
There's the
that's-
root. We
yeah.
talk about root and fruit all the time,
That's
don't
it.
we? Yeah.
That's it. And the last point we made was like, make it fun. We talked about longevity when we said this, right? And one of the things that longevity that people do is laugh,
Right.
and they're joyful,
Yep.
right? So make it fun, and that means you need to have people in your life. That's important for all those things to occur.
And don't worry about being a little vulnerable and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff because you have to let your guard down a little bit in order to be authentic, don't you?
Right.
So that was part
That was part 1.
1.
Yep.
Right. So again, we fleshed it out, and Stu gave you the highlights, but we delved deeper into each one. I really encourage you to listen to the first half because there was some really good nuggets there. So again, we're moving to part 2. And so the first topic that we are going to address, in this second episode is as you lead, and to lead, one of the things to lead effectively is to give the gift. And this is going to sound a little funny, isn't it? Well, you have to learn to give the gift of your availability. Mm-hmm. You need to be available to the people that you lead. Okay. Yeah. And there's so many components, that are in that, but it's core. I mean, if you are isolated and you're on the glass, you're in the corner office and you don't want anybody bugging you, that's not courageous leadership. Because that is one thing we were talking about, being courageous when it comes to leading. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Being available is so important because people want to be led.
Right.
Right. How can you do that if you're not available?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a simple concept, but some leaders are not available. They don't make themselves available. They make whatever else they have going on more important.
Correct.
And to me, you're the team of people you're leading. They're the most important, in my opinion.
Right. Well, everything else flows from that. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, because you can't do it all yourself. So if you are cultivating and managing and leading a team, then there has to be some interaction. Right? That's like Stu said. You got to be able to, we talked about rolling the sleeves up, right? When we were doing the other thing.
Yeah.
You got to get in there and roll the sleeves up with them. I read a book years and years ago. It's more of a Christian book, and it was talking about leadership in Christian circles. And the name of the book was "They Smell Like Sheep." Okay. Now think about that. I mean, a shepherd has got to smell like his sheep. Yeah.
Or leaders smell like sheep. Well, you're saying. I got it. Yeah.
The leader needs to smell like, and I don't want to make it sound like, workers or people that you're working for are sheep, but it was a good analogy.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, I cannot think of, when you're talking about the gift of availability, I cannot think of a better gift than your time.
Yeah. Right. It makes.
I mean, in all aspects of life, not just leadership.
Right.
But,
totally.
That's the
friendship. Best. Deep relationships. Everything has to be built on.
With your partner, with your kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's more valuable than any material gift you can give.
Well, and that's why we called it a gift. You know, sometimes we don't necessarily think about availability as a gift. Here, this is me, my time. I'm giving it to you as a gift. That matters, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That matters. Golly.
And there's one more aspect of this gift of availability that I just love is leaving breathing room for anything that's unexpected. And you know this, Mac, that there was one of my favorite sermon series was called Breathing Room, and it's all about this.
Right.
You know,
right.
When something happens, do you have the ability to just go handle it or be with somebody? You know, somebody needs you and you have your day. Do you have any breathing room at all to be able to say, you know what, I'll be right there.
Right.
You know,
right.
And how great is it if you do and you can do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, it means that you're demonstrating to anybody, like you were saying, doesn't have to be just at work. You're demonstrating that you are committed and you care.
And
right?
and the other person is important to you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you think about creating this breathing room, like I know a lot of people are busy these days, right? They don't have any time in their schedule. But it's just like a budget, right? Don't you? I mean, you're the financial guy, Matt. Don't you put a line in for like unexpected
miscellaneous
expense? Right. I mean, it's the same thing with your time.
Sure.
Right. And if you have that in there and you show people in your life how important they are.
Right. Right. Well, and you know, this space that you do create, sometimes when people are in need and you want to be there, you know, you care and you want to be, but you won't. Sometimes you just want to default to trying to give them advice to make it better, and that's a heartfelt thing. It's not bad, but most of the time, unless you're asked for it, it means to just be there. Okay, just create the space for the people and don't worry about trying to offer advice again, unless it's asked and you get to that place in the conversation. But just be in the same space with them. Don't try to leap to helping them try to fix it, you know, whatever it is, right?
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, you're available, but you're not being overbearing.
Sometimes they just need to listen for you to listen.
Sure, exactly. You know? Exactly.
And you don't know how much time it's going to be. It could be a minute. It could be longer, you know.
But you need to be prepared for it, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the gift. Give the gift of availability. Not, again, Sue made a great point. Not just as you lead, but as you just are. Mm-hmm. Right? You just live life. That's a great thing.
That's a courageous leader right there.
Right. That's a courageous thing to do. Right. So give the gift of availability. That was our first part for part 2.
Right. And the next part is, so people's eyebrows are going to go up when I say this.
No, you're right.
Have a willingness to suffer.
You ever heard that in a management seminar or leadership seminar before?
If I was in front of people right now, Mac, and I said this, I would literally stop and look around the room and wait for somebody to raise a hand or say something. Because you know the minds are going, what does that mean?
What is he talking about, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, one example could be suffering through second-guessing yourself. Like, who hasn't done this? Right. You know, the stories we tell ourselves. I mean, yeah, I know for me, my brain just keeps going. I get to sleep. If I wake up, I'm in trouble because it's going and going and going and you might run yourself down some path that of something that isn't even true.
Well, that's typically what happens, quite frankly. Okay.
What do you call that? The monkey brain, right? Yeah.
The brain goes. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about yes. Okay. And you will. Let me just put it this way. We're just giving you an example, but we're certainly not saying, well, courageous leadership eliminates that.
Right.
It won't.
Right.
Okay. The more courageous you are as you lead, the more you're going to suffer. Okay. I'm just giving you some, advice from my own life that the more you are courageous and lean in, the more you're going to deal with people, the more you're going to have to deal with yourself. And every single one of those components will cause you at some point to suffer.
Yeah.
It just does. I mean, it's just the way it works, so.
Well, also you can look at it from, so that's yourself suffering
Right. And
through
your
second-guessing,
decision making and
and
everything
second-guessing
else.
yourself and all. That was a really bad grammatical sentence. I apologize to all the English majors out there that are cringing.
Okay.
So, but how about suffering in others' suffering, or recognizing that others and being there, like participating?
There's the gift of availability again. We go back to that, right?
And this is something, we talk about spirituality and God a lot, obviously, on this podcast.
Right.
This is something I believe God does. God is there in your suffering. So a good leader, if I can go back to what we're talking about, courageous leadership, a good leader is there as well.
Right.
They haven't run away. They're there to be with you however you need them to be.
Well,
right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's Tribe of Five. We talk about all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing that I really didn't grasp until later in my life, and that's as I look at you, Stu. Guess what I see? God.
Oh, awesome.
I see
was
God.
wondering what was going to come out.
Well, I had a couple other things going on in there, but I wasn't going to say it. Okay. But as I look into Stu's eyes, or I look into anybody's eyes, how do you think God sees the world?
Yeah.
God sees the world through our eyes.
Us. Yeah, through us.
Okay? And that's what's so beautiful about the whole way it's all designed. You know? So, yes, if you suffer, I'm going to suffer. Okay? We are one. And in this oneness, we all take on the suffering and the joy that we all experience.
Right.
So it's inevitable.
Yeah.
You're not going to bypass this. It's not going to happen.
Well, and if you think about it, Mac, there's an authenticity to suffering, right? Humility. Like, to me, being vulnerable is being authentic means being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
True. Absolutely.
And that's a great example, right?
Yeah.
You might, by showing this side of you as a leader, you will make it okay for the people that you're working with and helping or leading, whoever that may be, including yourself.
Sure.
You're making it okay for them to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's being a good, courageous leader that is inspiring some good things to happen in somebody's life, right? It's
Totally,
by being authentic.
Right. And trusting, if you've worked at, and if you've worked at these things that we're talking about, then they gradually get, I don't know if I'm going to call it easier, but the more you've melded that team together, those people that you lead, that you can begin to trust them just as much as they're going to trust you and their environment, then these things become, what shall I say, they become more effective because people are leaning in.
Yeah.
They're not questioning everything all the time.
Right. Right.
So it's a dynamic that works constantly, again, not against itself, but it works in tandem all the time. You can't separate any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So guess what, Matt? If you embrace this concept we're talking about,
Yes.
right, willingness to suffer, we do.
Okay.
And we're encouraging all you out there to do the same thing.
Yep.
Guess what you're doing? You are doing one of the things we say at the end of every podcast episode. You are shattering the norm.
I probably ought to do that here, right? Hang on a second. Okay.
We shattered the norm right there. Yeah.
We just shattered the norm, okay?
But it's true.
Yes.
Because it's not normal.
Right.
I mean, hopefully it will be. Hopefully we encourage people to embrace this concept.
Sure, but as Stu says, it's most of the time it's outside of your normal flow. We head down, moving through the same old, right? So we always encourage you to think outside and dare to go there and all that. So Good stuff, man. Good stuff. So that's we're gonna take a little exhale from that good stuff. Yeah, and we're gonna take a little break, and then we're gonna be right back to finish up the episode with a couple more little highlights and some nuggets. All right, so hang with us. We'll be right back.
Like what you hear so far? Join us in the Rogue Nation by going to our website, gorogue.life, where you will find links to our social media and podcast channels and a way to subscribe to all our happenings. We encourage you to become a member of our cafe, where you can interact with us and fellow roguers and keep the conversation going. please share us and like us. Now, let's get back to our Wise Guys.
All right, welcome back to the Wise Guys podcast. We're in this episode, the Wise Guy duo, because we don't have the Rev with us this week, which we truly miss. Just got Coach Stu and myself. We are talking about courageous leadership. And so we've been talking about it this episode as well as the previous one. So you get a whole bunch of information when it comes to all this leadership stuff. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We talked about giving the gift of availability, having a willingness to suffer. And a third topic that we're going to deal with now is developing the ability to stay focused. That takes courage, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you got, if you're all over willy-nilly, your people will see this. It isn't going to work for you. It isn't going to work for them. And it's going to eventually just implode on itself. I've seen that happen lots of times, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
And there's some things involved with that. There's some little tips and nuggets that we can give you, when it comes to that.
Yeah. You can... I don't think I know how to do this very well, but we're going to encourage everybody to learn how to graciously say no.
No. It's just a 2-letter word. It's not complicated. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
If you can't do this, it makes it really hard to have breathing room.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, good point.
I mean, to go back to one of the earlier points, it really does.
You're right.
And I know, you have a good heart when you're saying yes. You want to help. You want to be there. You want to do it. You want, they're asking you for a reason. You're, and you're honored by that. But sometimes you're not helping them or yourself or other people. Mm-hmm.
Well,
by saying
I think
yes.
that there's a really great point that if you are so scattered and no breathing room, no, not even time to think, and you're worn out and your health starts to, all this stuff goes together, right? It's all holistic. Mm-hmm. It's not courageous. It's really kind of, it takes more courage to say no because it matters and it makes a difference. It's not because you just don't want to deal with it. I want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch the game,
Right.
It's literally that you will not serve yourself or others well if you just make yourself available to anything. It just doesn't work.
And for any of you that were like me as a kid, and this is what it was like, I'd be out all day playing, right? I'd walk in the house, literally all day. And the first thing I'd say to my mom is, man, there's nothing to do. I just been out all day. Like, this is how I work. If you're like that and you're going to say yes to things, right? Then maybe you should learn to delegate, right? Maybe delegate. And there's another word that's important: delegate and trust.
You trust in the delegation.
In the delegation.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well,
and if you can't do that, then you got to back up a little bit here. All right. If you can't trust that when you delegate, it's going to get done, or at least it's going to be moving forward, then there's another problem that you got to deal with. And you got to, put the brakes on and figure out what's going on there. Because that's not good for anybody either.
Right.
So, you probably have heard about this concept. If you haven't, we're just going to hit the highlights. But when you don't, the way that you can help yourself stay focused, let me put it that way, is to be conscious of the thing that years and years and years ago they came out with this thing about called, the tyranny of the urgent. All right. And it's a 4-quadrant. You love to have the picture thing out there, right? And basically just what it says is everything that you do, everything that you need to do, everything that's on your to-do list falls in one of 4 categories.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So, you've got the urgent but not important. Mm-hmm. Okay. You've got the important but not urgent. Okay. You've got the urgent and important, and you've got the not urgent and not important. Now that was a lot there. Okay, and probably you were trying to follow us and all of that. But the whole point of this thing, without getting into the weeds over it, is you've got to decide where these to-do list items fall and then where to focus your attention on it so that you just don't run all kinds of rabbit trails.
This is really helpful. And if you put like your action items, let's call them in there in these quadrants.
Yeah.
What I've learned when I've done this is like there's one quadrant that just gets overloaded. You know?
Yeah.
And it's always like the urgent and important for me, but not always. Sometimes it's some of the other ones. But before I forget, Mac, we should put this in the show notes.
I think we will.
A picture of it or a link to it so people can see what we're talking about. But it's good to do that. Have you ever done that? What I was talking about?
Yeah, I put links and stuff like that.
No, I mean with the quadrants, like like take like some things that are on your list and then put them in these quadrants and see.
Well, Stephen Covey was kind of dealing with all that, years and years ago. But here's the thing, like Stu was saying, yes, initially, a lot of times you put it into the, urgent and important.
Right.
And when you see that, I mean, it's a perfect example. And you look at that thing and you go, are you kidding me? What? And there's where the leadership of yourself comes in.
Yes.
Where you got to say, oh, no, I'm not putting that in that category. I'm putting it down here. And I'm putting this over there, Because most of the time, they really don't belong in that category. It's just that was your default mode and you're going Mach 6 with your hair on fire all the time. But you've got to learn to be able to delegate your to-do list to the proper place so that you can be effective and not burn yourself out.
Well, and to put all these things in the proper perspective, like you said, right?
Yeah.
You may not have even thought about it that way until you looked at them like this.
Right. I mean, it just we tend to just go with the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
That's just how we all operate. And if there's way more squeaky wheels than you can handle, which is usually the case,
right?
Then either you become overwhelmed by them, or you manage them and you lead courageously.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, there we go. There's a nugget.
Good point. I love it.
Okay.
I love it. So how about there's another concept we want to talk about, and how about accepting the responsibility to grow? Right? And to grow, like to me, this is kind of like personal growth, like self-help, where you can cultivate greater emotional intelligence. You're basically working on you. You work on you. This is, to me, is very important for anybody that's in leadership.
Right.
Anybody that's been a leader, you don't have it all figured out, and you can't stop. Like I often wonder about this with therapists. Do they work on themselves? Like if I'm going to a therapist,
do they have a therapist?
Do they have to me, that's important that they continue to work on yourself, because things are always, the world's changing, you're changing. I mean, things aren't the same today as yesterday.
Correct.
So this is the same thing in leadership. Are you working on you? To me, in my life, it's been important. I've done a lot of this, and I continue to do it.
Yeah, well, we go back to the being ineffective. That was one of the things we talked about last week. And sooner or later, if you don't take this to heart and you just cruise, here I am, I've made it, and this is the deal, then eventually that's not sustainable for whatever it is you're trying to do, or your team, for yourself, whatever it might be. So, and here's what we want to make a little bit of a distinction here. Most of the time, when you work for a company, you are going to go to meetings, you're going to go to seminars, you're going to go to talks, you're going to go to all kinds of different things. And these are meant to help you grow, right? And they're fine. I'm not saying anything against them, but they're not enough. Really, they're not. Because number one, they're pretty canned, they're pretty in a box kind of thing, and they can help. But if you don't shatter the norm there and you don't think outside the box to help you do you, then one size doesn't fit all. I guess you know what I'm saying, right?
Well, we're all, Mac, guess what? We're all exotic cocktails, right? We all have different needs. You know, I mean, I've done seminars workshops that or dealing with issues of the heart, very emotional,
right.
I've done ones that are dealing with issues of my head, my brain, my mind, and what that looks like,
Right.
So, I mean, there's, depending on who you are and what your needs are,
Right.
there's something
it's a very broad.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit into one category. And I'll go back. I've told you this. Stu knows this, and we've talked about it a zillion times. And the reason it's on my list is because I think it's so important. And he's already mentioned it. But cultivate greater emotional intelligence. Now we talk about root and fruit. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to go back and listen to our episode that we talk about that. But essentially, the root and fruit thing says, if you have an apple tree and you cultivate its root, it's going to produce apples.
Right.
All right. But if you focus on the apples and you neglect the root, you ain't going to have any apples.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So to me, as a core root of your responsibility to grow and growing is to work on your emotional intelligence. And there's lots of places you can go to look about that and look it up and all that, but there are so many really cool components to that if you commit to doing that, I don't mean achieve it. I'm just saying what are we more than zero.
More than zero.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
That's all you need. It's more than zero.
Then you will be amazed because I love this too, to talk about this for years. Then you just are.
You just are, right?
You just become.
You wake up one day and you just are this.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're just different. And you can't put a finger on it. You can't say, oh, well, I studied page 25 through 30 and look at this now. Here I am. All right. It isn't like that. If you put in the work to your root, you will be absolutely amazed at what the fruit will get produced from that. So I just want to back up a little bit on that to say, don't bypass that step. Believe me, if anything, get that one right.
Yeah, for sure. And if this sounds like a lot to everybody, Mac, this, we talked about seminars and workshops, things like that. Here's something you can do that'll help you grow. It's just this simple. Just have more conversations, right? And in those conversations,
this is coming from the master conversationalist.
Yeah, I love it. And here's what makes it. Here's Stu's secret. This is a Stuism, I guess. If you ask, so what you do is ask open-ended questions,
Sure.
and then there's more to it. Listen. I have been told by people, that I've met, wow, I really had a great conversation with you. Like, let's chat again sometime. And I walk away and I'm like, I said like 3 words in that whole conversation. I maybe 3 sentences. I asked like 3 questions and they talk. But that's a great way for you to grow because, right? When I tell my wrestlers this when in the room, I'm like, if they're not listening, how are they going to learn anything?
Right.
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 So
well, I think, what is that at that? You got 2 ears and you got what?
Right,
one mouth.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, this is a good way to inspire people if you do this.
For sure it is,
and to encourage them and show them, how to be a good leader, a courageous leader.
Well, and what you definitely need to do is Stu is explaining all this, you have to apply Stewishness to this. Okay? We were talking about this week. So that's a new coined phrase that we have now. Stewishness. All right? And it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. I love you for it. Okay,
I appreciate that. Sometimes it's hard for me to do it. We were talking about that.
Yeah. So it's mainly putting this stuff into practice is kind of what it is, in your own way, with your own little flavor, because you're an exotic cocktail just like, everybody is. And so you're flavoring the conversation with you.
There
right.
You go.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I love it,
That's great.
Oh, so accepting the responsibility to grow. Pretty cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
Submit to a mentor, maybe. If that's applicable, you have to humble yourself to somebody else to help you, get better, right?
I think it always is.
Yeah.
I mean, we can always learn and get new information from somebody else's perspective.
Right.
Right.
I mean, but you have to overcome some some things within yourself to submit yourself to somebody, even if you know they know more than you do.
Yeah.
All right. It's not natural for a lot of people to say, "Okay, I'm listening. All right, you want me? Right. Okay, that's a good nugget. Okay, I'm going to go do it. Thank you."
Well, if you want to grow, right, allow that water to be poured on you because you need it to grow.
Oh, the roots. Yeah, I love that, man. Root and fruit. There it is. Well, there you have it, gang. I mean, we fire hosed you a little bit. We always, we do that pretty much always anyway.
Yep.
Rewind, start it again, listen to it again, go back to last, episode, put it all together. But I really, really, really think that you can, well, not just think, I know that you can pull something out of these 2 episodes that can certainly help you be more courageous.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to just being you as well as helping others.
Yeah.
Because that's really what leadership is. It's taking your abilities, your experience, your gift of your time, and lifting other people up while you're at it. I mean, it can't be isolated. It can't be all about you. We talk about the me and the we. Mm-hmm. So I hope this helps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it helps, but we have to challenge everybody like we always do, right?
Every week.
Every week. Here we are with our MI5, right? So your mission, should you choose to accept it, and that we really have been talking about that a lot, you got to accept it. You got to roll your sleeves up, right? Bottom line, decide to think differently, because it is going to take you out of your norm. It is going to take you to a place where you got to go someplace you haven't gone before.
Right.
And then as we talked about it in this episode, you got to find others. You got to find the like-mindeds. Now, here's what that means too. We don't talk about this a lot. You're finding the like-mindeds. You're not trying to convince somebody to be a like-minded.
Good point. You're right. Yeah.
You put it out there and they will come. All right?
Yes.
You can't force anything in this whole deal. All right? And then what you do is you strap on the armor, as we call it. And that's basically the truth that you know. To hold it loosely enough so that if you have to change some of the armor, you can. Mm-hmm. But for now, for this moment, you ground yourself in what you know to be true. You do it in love, and you move on. But then you got to storm the gates. And it starts with you. You got to storm your own gates of stinking thinking, as the Rev would say, right? You've got to do a work on yourself in order to then help storm the gates of others' ignorance. And I say that in the broad sense, not demeaningly, all right? You just don't know. They just don't know. You're ignorant of it. You can be able to break down some of those barriers that are holding yourself and others together the best you can. And if you do those, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you get to unleash the unthinkable.
Yes, sir. That's right.
So there we are. All right, another episode in the bank. Again, Mr. Rev, but he'll be back with us next episode. Right, Stu?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff,
yeah.
man. So thank you, my brother. It's always fun to be here to just learn together as well as share some of the nuggets. It's always fun.
Absolutely.
So thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Share us, like us. Come back and listen to us again. Go back and listen to us on our previous episodes and stick with us. And we do appreciate it. So have a great week. And we'll see you on the flip side. Take care.